Welcome to Still Growing in Grace, a program dedicated to inspiring joy, giving hope, and delighting in grace. I'm Mike Zenker, and I'll be sharing with you a message of hope that will expand your understanding of God's love and amazing grace. God already deeply loves you, totally accepts you, and really, really likes you. Growing in Grace Ministries Canada and Hope Fellowship, your community church, invite you to enjoy today's program as we dig deeper into what it means to be still growing in grace. All right. Good morning, everyone. It's good to have with me today. It's a lovely day-ish. We got hit with a small blast of winter, but many of my friends more north of us, and definitely towards Buffalo, New York, they got nailed. So, yikes! I used to live in Fort Erie, but to have 66 inches of snow, oh my! All right. This morning, I'd like to continue in our conversation about this journey of growing and unlearning. And last week, I started to talk about after re-listening to it, I realized it's about our attitude of growing and unlearning. And again, I'm triggered by a book that's come out and it's coming out. This book called Out of the Embers, Faith After the Great Deconstruction by Brad Jerzak. If you have watched our program or listened in on the podcasts at all, by the way, this program's available, and so is my Sunday morning stuff, on almost every platform of podcasts. So look in the links below. They're all listed there. But this book, if you've ever questioned faith and then it got scared because it got weird, oh no, you're going to lose everything, this book is going to be amazing. I've just started reading it. I got a pre-copy to kind of browse, and usually I look at the index, and the index gives the sneak peek. I'm surprised some people don't understand that. Like, in my mind, like, I used to work in a Christian bookstore, and so people would open a book and flip to partway through. I'm thinking, why would you look partway through? There's nothing there to read that'll give you context. I go right to the index, contents, and okay, what's this book going to cover? What's this about? So this one's big. This one's long. It has a lot of categories and subcategories. And I think, I'm going to have Brad on the show, and we'll talk about it. But there's a number of interviews with him on YouTube, so please do a search and go listen to them. But I think because we've had Brad on many times, I want to hear his heart on this. And one thing I love about this book and his tone and how he's having a conversation about this is not about promoting a book. Do you know what I mean? There's some authors, it's all about promotion, self-promotion. I don't get that sense from Brad, and he's not going to say no to people promoting his stuff, but I don't see him going crazy and pushing it on people. I don't know. That goes for anything. You got a new event coming up. It's fine to promote, but there's the subtle line of over-promote and self-promotion that, I don't know. I have a hard time with that because I did it. And I didn't even know it. Oh, it's so embarrassing. But anyway, today's we're going to continue the conversation because last time I talked about the tone, our gentleness approach to individuals that are growing as well, and we hear somebody wrestling with a certain topic. What's our attitude going to be? Are we going to correct them immediately? Are we going to put them in their place or say, no, that's terrible thinking? Or are we going to listen? And are we going to maybe empathize with them? Anyway, there's a number of ways to look at this, and I want to kind of have a conversation with that today. I want to open up a document here that kind of got me going. Sandy, hey, are you back in the UK, Sandy? She's watching from visiting the States, I believe. And by the way, Sandy, did you get part of that snow? Because I think you weren't too far away from that. I don't know. Anyway, that'll be good. So give me one moment here. Oh, yeah, another rabbit trail, because I do that. Another article that Brad wrote not too long ago, which I'm really pondering and really like. It's called Why I Don't Think I'll Claim to Be Christian. I like that. And it may seem like at first glance, depending on your religious lens, oh no, you're denying the faith. No, no, no. Read the article. Read the article. Look it up. Why I Don't Think I'll Claim to Be Christian. And basically, it gets into let's not call ourselves that. Let's not claim, I claim this, I claim that. It's the article points into this question of, well, ask people around me. Let my actions and behavior reveal whether I'm a Christian or not. If I don't have to claim it, I want to be able to live it. And I thought that was really, really, really good. So honestly, it's worth a conversation. All right, where we go. So on this past Sunday, if you like good encouragement, this past Sunday was pretty good. Oh, you're there for Thanksgiving. Cool. Thanks, Sandy. This past Sunday's message at Hope Fellowship was, I think, pretty cool. Last Sunday was really good too. It's a 4-part series, but the last 2 dealt with a topic that I have been passionate about my whole life, and that is, who am I in Christ? How does God see me? Because most of us get our concept of who God is wrong or incomplete. And we definitely get our concept of who we think we are and how God sees us. We usually get that wrong or really incomplete. And so I thought, let's go to the manufacturer's report and see what the manufacturer says about us. And as I was going through the list of how God sees us, it blew my mind. It reminded me that, hang on, our culture is built on self-loathing and, put yourself down, you're not good enough. And then there's parts of our culture that are only about just the good, the good, the good, the good. And they're almost joy boys that are unrealistic in their approach. And it's almost like, okay, you're trying to make you're speaking so positive about yourself for the sake of positivity, which has value, but when you overrun the base, it becomes la 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 la. I'm perfect. I'm wonderful. And you don't. Your humility goes away, because our human behaviors and actions and responses are not perfect because we're still growing and maturing. Our concept of our theology of who God is constantly growing and changing, and I think that's a really cool concept to consider. So let's get into this. There's some pretty big topics, and we're gonna have Bill Thrasher and Richard Murray back soon, and we're gonna talk about some of those I think the big pitfalls of the church. And if I can find their conversation, they don't know I'm talking about this right now, haha, because they don't tune into the program live. Here we go. The biggest blind spots in evangelical Christianity. And I think we're going to kind of cover that. And they wrote a number down, but I'm thinking I'm not going to say a number because I think the list is huge. And that's what kind of motivated me to this conversation today. To realize that, hang on, uh-oh, what's going on? What is going on here? It looks like my live stream's having a hard time, and that's not good. So I'm hoping we're okay. Give me 1 second. I hope it's okay. No, it seems fine. Okay, good. Phew. Must have been one of my programs. So here's some of the stuff that kind of affects our thinking of who God is. Number one, what we've been told. So where you heard about God or higher power, as some circles use that term, and don't be afraid of terms that sound different than your religious upbringing, because you can get offended so fast. The fact that you're offended tells you something about how narrow the faith is that you've been told about. All right? When your religion only points to loving certain people, and clearly you're one of those, then your religion or faith is incomplete. and has much growing to do, much more maturing to do. You also need to look at your life circumstances, your personal lens. Like I grew up in a very religious family, German Baptist of all things, which I'm now thankful for my path, but it also gave me a very narrow perspective on who God is supposed to be, and he only picks his favorites. Everyone else is out, we're in. But then I realized a lot of churches do that. We've got the gospel. We've got the good news. We're the real church. It's like, wow, the arrogance of it. And I mean it. It is brutal arrogance. If your church is saying that we're the only right one, then run. Just run, or at least begin to question everything, which is what this program's about. Questioning, growing, not being satisfied with all this. Even though in my journey there's been a pendulum swing of I used to believe this and now I believe this. I was suggested by someone that I care about, don't say it like that anymore because it seems like you can't make up your mind. But that's not what's going on. I'm moving on from childish things. I'm moving on from incomplete knowledge. Why do you think we have grades in our schools? Because you move on from foundations to the next level of foundations, and so on and so on. If you don't complete those foundations, you got to repeat it, which I did. I repeated grade 2. It was terrible. Awful years. But you had to get those foundations. And I have a hunch that in the church world, many of us were pushed through without even doing a test. We were told what to believe, and we're never allowed to question it or wrestle with it, to contemplate, to think through. When I have conversations now with people about who I think God is or who they think God is, my role is more to listen now and have a conversation instead of be the answer person. And yeah, I've been a pastor for 32 years. I've been set up to be an answer person. I got to have all the answers for everybody in the church. No, I don't. Not anymore. It was never true to begin with. My job is to point people to, first of all, recognize there is a higher power. I believe his name's Jesus. And Jesus is not as scary as we've been told. So it's got to be good news or it's not good news at all. That's how I've been seeing it. There's a text from 1 John I want to read to you that has probably helped me the most in keeping my feet grounded, but also wisdom for all of us in how do I know I'm growing? Don't you want to know that? Here's why I asked or say the question. Again, I've grown up in church. I'm 54. I think I'm 54. I was born in 68. I grew up in a church right from childhood, and I always looked up to the older folks because we had to, and only the older folks who've been in church forever are the ones we're supposed to listen to, and they're the ones who got onto church boards. They're the ones who made all the decisions for us lowly folks who can't think for ourselves, or we don't have enough experience, or we don't have enough maturity. And so there was a level of classes in the church, just like society. And some of the classes had to do with family classes. If you were the in family in the church, then you got to say and speak up. But if you were not part of that class, which my family was not, we were part of the lower tier in the church I grew up in because, well, mostly because my siblings and I, we got in trouble a lot. We were misunderstood, and all the troublemakers were pushed down to the lower class. We got our ears pulled, we got backs of our heads slapped, got in trouble a lot. But the in crowd, the upper tier, their family connections let them get away with whatever they wanted to do. But that also went for church decisions. And I know many, many people have been hurt, especially in the group that I was in. But the more I talk to people, the more I've learned over the last 32 years of being a pastor, my situation is not unique. my church background is not a new or isolated thing. It's a common one in our Western world. I thought that it would be the Baptist thing, but it's not. Pentecostal church I went to, same legalism, you name it. And almost every single church in North America would have a small sliver of this, if not a huge one. But I have bumped into people that they didn't hear legalism growing up. And what surprises me, oh my goodness, it's those churches that I would have called liberal growing up. Oh, don't go there, they're too liberal. And now I'm realizing, dang, they had it more right than we did. They had less rules, they were more loving. They weren't told God was angry. But that was my message. So again, if you're connecting with me, it's likely because you had that background or you've been around people that have that background. But there are people who have not had that, and they've had good messaging. It's like, wow, what's that like? Because I got a lot of trauma I'm dealing with. Church trauma. Oh boy. David Hayward, he has some amazing cartoons on church trauma and church judging and stuff. A lot of it's poking fun, but it's actually under the surface. On the second look, you go, that's really real. But it starts off as humor. Powerful message. So this journey of growing, 1 John 2:12-14, it says, I'm writing to you who are God's children because your sins have been forgiven through Jesus Christ. I'm writing to you who are mature in the faith because you know Christ who existed from the beginning. And I'm writing to you who are young in the faith because you have won your battle with the evil one. Wow. Let's pause there for a moment. This idea of I'm writing to you who are God's children. That's pretty cool. But he repeats speaking to the three groups. And I'll continue because I have to join them together in just a moment. It says, I have written to you who are God's children because you know the Father. And I've written to you who are mature in the faith because you know Christ who existed from the beginning. I've written to you who are young in the faith because you are strong. God's word lives in your hearts and you've won your battle with the evil one. So why is this one so important? Because, hey, good morning, Kay. Why is this so important? Because the beginning of this child level, and again, the reason I told you about those tiers in the church, TIERS, is because many of those who were in leadership or older or been in church forever or Sunday school teachers their entire life or been on the church board for 30 years, 40 years, they think they've risen to the level of maturity. When we take a look at a text like this and we realize, wait a minute, God's children, if you don't understand this first level of maturity, then you could be thinking you're a mature Christian or believer, and really you're still a child. And here's the giveaway. I'm writing to you who are God's children. It's talking about children needing to know who their parents are. Okay? This is about identity. And then it repeats later, I've written to you who are God's children because you know the Father. Do you know your lineage? Do you know where you come from? I know people that are adopted that have had a very interesting hunger to know their roots, their heritage. But this particular one here, I'm writing to you, God's children, there's something going on here that, well, honestly, if you think you're mature and you haven't got this concept of knowing who you are in Christ and all that God sees and says about you, you're still a child. This is the child level, and it's important. Sometimes we think it's too childish when really it's the foundations. I believe I am a child of God. I understand the child level. I'm there still at some places. I really am. I see all three of these functioning in my life. They're not arrivals, which is what our culture tells us they are. They're not. They're fluid because we're opened up to different topics and we're a child in this theology, but we are mature in how we love others, but that's the love of God working in us without us even knowing it. So all this can happen all at once. Then it says, I'm writing to you who are mature in the faith because you know Christ who existed from the beginning. And he says that twice. From the beginning? What do you mean? This has to do with our union. This has to do with from the foundations of the world. This has to do with the Trinity, and we're being in. This is huge. This is not a separation issue. Then, of course, it says, I'm writing to you who are young in the faith. Because, hey, good morning, Terry. This next one says, I'm writing to you who are young in the faith because you've won your battle with the evil one. Well, guess what? It says later on, you're strong, God's word lives in you, and you've won your battle with the evil one. Who has really won their battle with the evil one? Well, part of this has to do with, knowing you're a child of God, knowing your real identity is not evil. Many people think they got two of them in them. That part of them, they got a good angel, bad angel. You don't. We are spirit beings. And I know people who do not profess to be a Christian. They got more God living out of them than half the church people I know. It's just true. One looks really religious and the other one looks like an authentic human. And they don't have the religious overtones. Some of us got to lose our religious language or dictionary because it's just weird. It's only for one culture. It really is. Or they take their religious culture language and bring it into the non-religious culture and think they're being, they're rising above or elite, which is really what they're doing when they're using code words. So we got to stop doing that. That's child level. But this idea of child, young adult, and mature. We're called to be mature. And I have a hunch the greatest evidence of mature is the amount of judgment that comes out of a person. So less judgment, and how much love comes out of them. Just others-centered agape. Agape is the Greek word for love that deals with only centered on others, never self-seeking. That definition is best described in, hey, Gerardo, holy smokes, buddy. Gerardo Sobrianis in Mexico. So good to see you, buddy. Ha, love it. So this definition of love is best described in 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind. Do you remember that one? That's about agape. Agape is kind. Agape is patient. Agape is never remembers our wrong. Like, this is actually God. God does not keep a record of our wrongs. So why do we? Do you see where all this maturing comes? So over the years, I've had to unlearn so many things. And I think one of my biggest categories, first of all, was forgiveness. Being forgiven was a foreign concept. I thought it was up to me to stay forgiven. And I had a long list, and I kept begging for forgiveness over and over again. That was one of mine. But that's just it. That was my understanding of what I believed. And I was taught by well-intentioned people. I could dwell on it and be angry with them and say they're jerks, have nothing to do with them. But that's not loving at all. There's some people I won't have anything to do with because they're toxic. I just blocked somebody last week because they were triggering stuff that I said, I don't want to deal with that. You don't get to message me or try to post on my page that the stuff that I want nothing to do with, but if I engage, then I'll sound like a jerk. And I don't want to do that. So you know what? It's my page. I just blocked them. I want nothing to do with that old system of really it's legalism. It's a system of religion that is about control and power. And that's what we're moving away from. That's my hope when I do the Still Growing in Grace. This is about growing deeper. What are some other categories or topics that come up that are questionable? Well, I know growing up there's two big ones. There was the topic of hell. What is it? Is it real? Oh no, I don't want to go there. So I had to pray the prayer a lot. So I make sure I wasn't going to hell. But I had a very narrow understanding of what this topic of hell was. And it wasn't until I began to explore the history of it and the early church fathers and how other longer running faith groups have been processing this topic. I was like, oh my goodness, how come I was only served a small sliver of this and it became the whole pie? In fact, the motivation for the whole pie of religion. But what triggered the deeper dive, and you might like this, was this topic of end times. Have you ever heard of end times? It refers to this concept that Jesus is coming back and the world's going to get worse, and there's a whole bunch of bad things going to happen on earth, and it's all spelled out in secret mode in the Bible. And only really smart people get to figure it out and tell you how those charts work. And I just believed it because I didn't question it. But it when I found out about, I'd say, 10 years ago, it was about 10 years ago that it woke up. Now let me back up. About almost 20 years ago, I read a book that triggered hope on that topic of, oh no, the world's going to get worse, the world's going to get destroyed, and it flipped it on its side. And I never went back to it, but it was on the back burner. Fast forward 10 years ago, I went to visit a friend in British Columbia, and he sat me down in front of a video that he said, I want you to watch this. And I was his guest, so I had to. And I got sucked in, and it connected to what I watched 20 years ago. It's like, oh my goodness. Which then spiraled me into a deep dive in realizing, wait a minute, what I've been told about end times is definitely incomplete. It is not how the early church saw this. And the Western church is really, really pushing the envelope here. It's on the conspiracy theory line. It really borders on that. And by the way, I have a hunch. I shouldn't say this. Okay, I won't. Anyway, that thinking comes from that. And so when I undid the unlearning of end times, by the way, I taught this in 2013, so you can go on to my YouTube channel and look up a more hope-filled perspective on end times. There's some really good messages there that was very raw and real. But I don't think it means what we think it means at all, which then led me to realize, wait a minute, hell is another topic I get to undo. Then the church has this topic called penal substitution atonement theory. It has to do with the reasons why Jesus came to die, and there are many different categories. So, like, these are things I've had to unlearn. These are topics that I had to question. I'm still wrestling through it. Not wrestling so much, but I'm on a trajectory now that is dragging me into a more hope-filled lens. And I don't ever want to stop. To me, I'm getting dragged. I'm not pursuing it, and it's been fun. Who I've been bumping into, different teachers, leaders, individuals, people who are not teachers, and just hearing their stories. Oh my goodness, God told you that, or the Holy Spirit or Trinity revealed this to you, or the Spirit in you revealed a really cool truth that I've been pondering too. What told you too? That's pretty cool. God's character. Man, God's been getting a bad rap over the years that God's angry and he's really ticked off and you better smarten up and you better go to church, you better you better give, and you better blah blah blah, and all these fear tactics. Well, take away the word fear, not even the word, but take away the concept out of those arguments, and there's very few arguments left. Suddenly God does become love. Folks, if I were to sum this up today, I'd say pursue an understanding of God's love, that God is love. Just pursue that. If you don't know where to start, look for it. You're going to find in non-religious writings. You're going to find in some religious writings, but it's there. And when you begin to look for it, oh my goodness, whatever you look for, you will find. Funny how that works. I'm looking for a more hope-filled lens. And if it doesn't give me hope, I dismiss it. Because I believe God's big enough to get my attention and guide me and direct me. Even if I flip-flop into something kind of weird for a few minutes, it's fine. God's got me. I don't have to worry about being led astray as some religious folks will do, because that's a threat again. Oh, be careful of that person. Don't listen to that one. By the way, when people are saying, Yeah, Kay Fairchild says, knowing Father is love changes everything. And that's exactly it. That's what I've been saying the last number of weeks here at Hope Fellowship on Sunday mornings. This is about God is love. Everything. Because if it don't look like love, it ain't love. And if it don't look like love, it ain't God. Period. And if a person comes at you and they don't look like the love of God, they ain't coming from the love of God. They're coming from an ego. That's it. Easy. It's not rocket science anymore. Oh, but they mean well. Well, that's nice. It's got to be loving. And unfortunately, we can have bad days. That's why relationships matter. So that your demeanor of how you live, how it's displayed, the consistency of it matters. I know when your job is talking, you get in trouble for what you say. It happens. But my hope is that those who listen and have listened to what I've taught for the last 32 years, there's a consistency there. That's my hope. And if I go off of consistency, then forgive me and be kind and gentle to me. Don't publicly humiliate me. That's not going to go over well for my soul. I'm a tender person. I really am. Very sensitive. Much more sensitive than you think. By the way, the idea of genders being more sensitive than others? Nah, not a chance. We are all equally hypersensitive. All of us. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up because it's time. And I look forward to more conversations and diving deeper into some of these things that need to be questioned. If you have a topic that is dear to you that you really are trying to figure out, send me a message on Facebook or email me. The emails are below. And we'll see if we can get to some of them. Or I may have covered them already. So if you look down to the YouTube links of Still Growing in Grace, there's 151 different videos of some incredible conversations. There's some other teachers who are far better at some of these conversations. I'm only bringing a Canadian lens on some of these topics. And by the way, my lens is also more pastoral because I want people to gently see and hear. There are ministries where the people are not pastors, so to speak, as in pastoring a church, and they get to just shoot from the hip and say whatever they want. But when you have people in front of you processing things, there's a different sense of gentleness. You're seeing the eyes of people. You want them to get it. And when you sense they're not quite getting it, you continue on a little slower. Kay Fairchild's watching right now, but she speaks to a group of people too. And it's different having people in front of you than just a video screen recording. It really is. And so, in fact, I had one person say, so why meet together? Why get together? Why can't we just watch online? And there's something I can't explain. And yes, I've gotten comfortable with not gathering. When we had to go back to in person, I was kind of sad. Oh man, I like this sitting at the computer and chatting. It's so much easier. And that's just it. It is easier. But we are created, hardwired as relational beings. Some are not as relational, some are more relational. Fine, I'm not getting into all that. But there's something about the presence of others because Christ in them will minister to Christ in you and vice versa. You can't explain it. It is mystical, and that's an encouragement trip, not a guilt trip. So go for coffee with someone else. Go join a group. Like, I don't know. Not everybody's into church. I get that. But we are into connecting. So find your ways to connect. All right. I'm going to run. It is, I got a busy week. Lots going on. So thank you for taking time to jump in. And again, look forward to your comments and your messages about topics and such. If you've enjoyed this program, consider supporting it. You know, this is, I value those responses as well. You guys have a great day, and we will catch you next time on Still Growing in Grace. After all, none of us have arrived. Join me next time on Still Growing in Grace for more good news. Enjoy previous episodes by downloading our podcast at growingingrace.ca. You can also visit hopefellowshipycc.com to find our service times and location. If this show has been an encouragement to you, please consider making a donation today at growingingrace.ca and help us keep spreading this good news. Thank you again for tuning in to Still Growing in Grace.